Alrighty. Here we go. Chapter 9, Conclusion. We talked about singer-songwriter movement of the early 70s, and we listened to some stuff by Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, and Carole King. Carole King from the Tapestry album, uh, a real benchmark work, one of those just legendary pieces of rock and roll that changed what came after it in terms of, I think, how women saw themselves and in terms of the opportunities that women got, because there were some very popular female artists in the 1970s. And although the sort of women's rights movement and women in positions of power, all of that was changing anyway, you can't underestimate the importance of a great piece of art that makes a lot of money for really changing the direction and changing the focus of what comes after that. So, Carole King Tapestry. Okay. Uh, Edwin Starr, great song on Motown, talking about the war. Number one song for Edwin Starr called War, a Motown classic. And the war, the Vietnam War, 1971, still going on. Still going on. It's not resolved yet. Carly Simon was another of the singer-songwriters from that movement that we talked about. Carly Simon married James Taylor. They were married for 10 or so years. But Carly Simon was a monstrous star, monstrously popular star herself. And You're So Vain was the biggest hit Carly Simon ever had. You're So Vain was, um, it was rumored that it was written about somebody particular. And it was unclear who the person was. And Carly Simon never told. She kept it a secret until about 10 years ago, I believe. A gentleman bought The Secret, and I think he gave $50,000 to a charity, and Carly Simon whispered the answer in his ear. And it's since become public that You're So Vain was written about a combination of people and a combination of relationships, but that a certain amount of the focus was the movie star named Warren Beatty. So, but regardless of who it's about, it's a very great song, classic song, tongue in cheek. You're So Vain, you probably think this song is about you. Carly Simon, monster hit, You're So Vain. When Rolling Stone magazine or anybody else talks about the greatest albums of all time, they invariably talk about the Beatles and Rubber Soul, Sgt. Pepper's Revolver, um, Abbey Road, an album, the White Album, which is officially called The Beatles. Those five are often in the mix. Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys is always there. And Bob Dylan will have um, two or three albums there as well. But in the Rolling Stone list of the greatest rock and roll albums ever, the only album in the top 10 by an African American artist was the album called What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. And it was released in 1971, and it's a great album. It's an album that talked about and focused energy on all the sort of early 70s issues, if you will, from unemployment and the crime, drugs, the disillusion of the family, and the lack of hope in many inner cities, especially in African American communities. Um, lack of educational opportunities or opportunities for advancement, as well as issues of the environment and a government not being responsive to the needs of the people. It was quite the project. It is a great album. And title track right now, What's Going On, Marvin Gaye, 71. Good stuff, man. Also, from What's Going On, this is Mercy, Mercy Me, subtitled The Ecology. Marvin Gaye singing about the environment. Great stuff. Marvin Gaye from What's Going On, Mercy, Mercy Me. Again, the only album by an African American artist in Rolling Stone's top 10. And yeah, I mean, if you're gonna, there's been a lot of great albums, but I think Marvin Gaye's What's Going On is just a notch above the rest. It's an extraordinary piece of work. If there's anybody that kind of deserves to be spoken of in the same breath as Marvin Gaye, it is the one and only Stevie Wonder. And in the early 70s, Stevie was immensely popular. He was then a young adult, so he had entered his 20s. He was kind of running his own show. He's a multi talented musician, keyboardist, harmonica player, and of course, a singer with an instrument that is extraordinary. Some great music from the early 70s, but my favorite song, and part of the reason I love this song so much is because, well, it got used in a Bud Light commercial, but part of the reason I love this song so much is because it still sounds new. It still sounds vital and vibrant. It still sounds, for lack of a better word, cool. And although I don't know what cool is anymore, I've read about cool on the internet, and I think this applies. Stevie Wonder and Superstition. Stevie Wonder, Superstition. Um, Truly an American legend. Stevie Wonder's amazing. All right. And next up on our list here, American Pie by Don McLean. Don McLean, singer songwriter, who's done a lot of good stuff, but his real moment in the sun, his real 15 minutes, and it was almost 15 minutes long. No, it wasn't. It was 8 or 9. It's just sometimes it felt like 15. The song American Pie. And American Pie, there have actually been college courses devoted to dissecting and analyzing what American Pie means and what all the different references are. I've never taken the course. I would never teach the course, but what I can tell you about American Pie is it did put the moniker of the day the music died very squarely on February 3rd, 1959, which, if you recall, we talked about. And February 3rd, 1959 was the day that Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and Richie Valens were killed in the small plane crash outside of Storm Lake, Iowa. And it was the first time in American rock and roll that America's youth lost three of their idols in one fell swoop, where you wake up in the morning and you look at the headline of the newspaper and you go, oh my God, that's what that was. American Pie talks about that by Don McLean, one of the huge hit records of 1971. American Pie, Don McLean. Okay, the last thing I want to walk you through a little bit for chapter 9 is you recall that Hair was rock opera that, as a musical, it sort of gained some traction with the youth of America. It was, in fact, staged in no small part to be appealing to a younger generation. The music was designed and written more for a younger generation. It started a little bit of a trend of some stage musicals that were, in fact, more embraced by a younger generation. It's not to say they weren't by the more established generation, but all of a sudden you had 18-year-olds going to see Hair, Jesus Christ Superstar, Godspell. And one of the things that made these musicals distinct from others was they had music in them that was then given a rock and roll treatment, and it was released to radios and record stores, and it charted alongside Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder and Carole King and Led Zeppelin. So this is from Godspell, a song called Day by Day. It was a top 10 hit in early 72. I'm listening to it. All right, I'll let it go. Okay, Day by Day, Godspell, 72. So that's it for chapter 9. We heard some great stuff. Great stuff. Breakups of the Beatles and the Supremes, Simon and Garfunkel, the release and popularity of the Jackson 5, the Carpenters, Elton John, and great music from the singer-songwriter group Carole King and Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, Carly Simon, and the truly amazing Stevie Wonder and the splendiferous What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. So that's it for now. I'll see you in chapter 10.